Well, hello, everyone. This is Gary Hargrave with Hargrave Ministries, and we are recording a wonderful interview today, actually this evening for Dr. Medzini. And many of you know Dr. Medzini, but for those of you who don't, Dr. Medzini is with the Hebrew University, and he has worked for years with the different aspects of Israel and its relationship to its neighbors, as well as communications from Israel and other things. And I would, in fact, let you, Dr. Medzini, give people some more introduction, maybe introduce Mickey, your son, and tell the people what you want to know about yourself.
Very good. I'm a native-born Israeli. I don't know if I'm unhappy or happy to tell you that I'm 91 years old, still at it. I went to school in Israel and in Haifa. I did my army service in a combat unit and then went to America for 3 degrees. I have a BA from CCNY, MA from Georgetown, PhD from Harvard. I worked for the Israel government for many years, and among my more important jobs was to be a spokesman for 3 prime ministers. Prime Minister Eshkol, the Prime Minister of Israel during the Six-Day War, Prime Minister Golda Meir. And one day in the summer of 1973, I had the great honor and opportunity of meeting a young senator who came to say hello to Golda Meir. His name was Joe Biden. And then I went on to do the same thing a few months for Yitzhak Rabin. I'm also taught at the Hebrew University for many years, Israeli politics, Israeli foreign policy, wrote 9 books, 100 articles, lectured in various places. But the most important thing, together with my late wife, I'm the author of 4 children, and they are the authors of 10 grandchildren. My son, Michael, Mickey, is with us this evening. He has been involved in high tech for many years until he decided to give it up. And today he is a tour guide. And in this capacity, he guides quite a few Christian groups in Israel. And he will probably have also all sorts of things to add from his perspective. And I'm delighted to share thoughts with you. I know Gary Hargrave for many years from a group called Ami, My People, based in Jerusalem, founded by a wonderful man, late Shlomo Chizak, whom we both admired.
Yes.
And in fact, he was the one who introduced me to Pastor Gary. And we have known each other. We're talking about 30 years, I think, at least.
I know we shouldn't admit it, but it has been that long.
Quite a long time. And I have been in touch with your groups in various places. The last time I spoke live in America was about 2 months ago to your group in Salinas, under the ministry of Pastor Ephraim Valverde III. And today, what I'm trying to do, given my age and a few other limitations, I'm doing Zooms, similar to what we're doing this evening, to various groups, mostly in America, but not only. And I try to contribute my share to the information effort of Israel, which is not always easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
But every one of us is trying to contribute whatever he can.
Yes. Well, I again appreciate you so much being here. And as you said, we have known each other for years, and it's always an honor to be around you because of the depth of knowledge and understanding that you have and the way you're able to convey it to people. And I appreciate you giving us all of your background, because what I am looking for in this recording is to get it out far and wide and let people understand from this level of knowledge and understanding what really is taking place and what is behind all of these events that have been going on now for about 13 days in Israel. So, one of the questions that I have is, do you feel that the invasion that has been spoken of Gaza is being held back for the sake of planning in order to try to make sure that the hostages are cared for and not injured in the process of an invasion? Or do you feel like there are other issues at hand?
I have a very strong feeling listening to television broadcasts this evening. About 2 hours ago, we saw the Prime Minister, we saw the Defense Minister addressing the troops, and it seems that the time for maneuvers and preparations and all sorts of other exercises is just about over. The War Cabinet is now in session, and presumably they are supposed to give the order. We have called up 360,000 reserve soldiers, which is a huge number. And the amazing thing is that the number of people who showed up who were not called up exceeded all expectations. In some units, they reported they called up 100%, and 120% people showed up. Now, veterans of previous wars, including people in their 60s and 70s, including people who remember the Yom Kippur War of 1973. I myself go back to the War of Independence. I was 16 during the year Israel was established. I did not fight at the time. I was in the youth brigades, but I've gone through probably all the wars with the exception of one. And therefore, there's also a time element. Your president was here yesterday.
Yes.
A very brief, short visit, 6 hours, very moving to all of us who've seen him, by his warmth, by his genuine attitude, by his desire to hear everybody, the way he talked to the families of the hostages and to those who are missing. We have no idea where they are. He's a humane person, but he's also the president of the greatest power. We were very encouraged by his visit because he told us on a number of occasions, we stand behind you. We are solidly behind you. However, he made one demand, and that is to allow the movement of about 20 trucks loaded with food, probably medicine, and I think some generators waiting to cross into the Gaza Strip from Egypt. In order to avert what may become, what is being termed a humanitarian disaster. And we agreed to that as long as the equipment comes from Egypt and not from Israel. And it has to come from Egypt because the Palestinians, the Hamas, who attacked us on October 7th, destroyed the two passes from Israel and the Gaza Strip. One is called the Erez Pass, and the other is called the Kerem Shalom. And therefore, these are not usable. The only ones used that can be used is the one from Rafah, and that controlled by the Egyptians on one hand and by Palestinians on the other. Our major concern is this. Is the movement of these trucks linked in any way to Hamas' agreement to release the hostages, at least the elderly and women, children, including babies? Among the hostages, there are people, one is a Holocaust survivor, in other words, he's in his 80s, probably late 80s. One has dementia, another needs medicine, the elderly walk with canes. Nobody has the exact amount of medicine they need, but there are also babies who need their own formula, which I'm not sure is available. I don't know if there's a linkage between the release of the hostages and the movement of these trucks. Israel faces a huge dilemma. If you go in, the Hamas, which is essentially a terror organization, in the international media, there's a tendency to call them militias, which is sort of an honorary title. They're not militias. They are terrorists, they're murderers, brutal people who have stormed Israel and murdered in cold blood, basically civilians, many of them young people who came to celebrate a festival in some nature area in southern Israel. And therefore, as far as we are concerned, the rules of war, the laws of war do not apply to them because they are not a regular army.
Right.
And therefore, they have to be treated in a totally different manner. Unfortunately, they were the government of the Gaza Strip. Technically, they're still the government of the Gaza Strip for the last 16 years. They took over in 2006, kicked out the Palestinian Authority, and since then they have governed the Gaza Strip and terrorized Israel on quite a few occasions. So we will be wiser probably tomorrow morning or the day after if Israel has finally launched its invasion into northern Gaza. There's another point I want to make. What is the linkage between this and a possible military operation undertaken by Hezbollah?
Yes.
In Lebanon?
Right.
We are not sure if we may not find ourselves fighting a two-front war, something that we did the last time during the Yom Kippur War.
Do you feel like there is any way to express we hear a lot about the civilian population in Gaza. My understanding is that Hamas was voted in by approximately 44% of the citizenry of Gaza when they were voted in as the government. It's hard to tell how much of that was feigned or how much of that is realistic. I heard from some official yesterday that he considers approximately 80% of the civilian population in Gaza as backing Hamas. What is your feeling with that?
That is the figure that we have. Look, Hamas, in order to understand Hamas, you have to read very carefully their covenant or the Hamas charter.
Yes.
And if you look at the logo itself is very indicative. Essentially, it is not only to destroy Israel, but to kill all Jews.
Yes.
Wherever they are, whether in Israel or in other places worldwide. In other words, as far as they're concerned, there is no room in the Middle East or anywhere else, for that matter, for a separate, independent Jewish Zionist state called Israel. Non-acceptable. In this respect, we are probably the only country in the world that whose existence as an independent state is challenged by its immediate neighbors. Even Taiwan. People do not challenge the right of Taiwan to exist. The question is, who will govern Taiwan? In Israel, we feel that if we lose a war, and I'll quote Ben Gurion, something I heard years ago, the founding father of Israel. Remember, he was once asked, Mr. Ben Gurion, when is Israel going to fight its last war? And his answer was the one that we lose. In other words, we cannot afford to lose a war because that means that we lose not only our independence, but we lose our life. So Hamas is not a regular army. Hamas cannot seek to be treated as an ordinary army because the rules of war, the laws of war do not apply to them. Hamas came into power Hamas was established in, I think, 1987, something like that, as a counterpart to the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was and remains essentially a secular nationalist body. They focused initially on on religion and education. And this is why Israel was not that concerned. On the contrary, some Israelis said, well, as long as they're focusing their attention on education, welfare, religion, that's okay with us. We did not read correctly the Hamas Charter, the Hamas Covenant. Had we done so, we would have discovered that essentially you can't negotiate, because what do you negotiate about? As far as they're concerned, negotiations mean that Israel gives up, produces a timetable for its dissolution and its elimination. And to this, of course, no one can accept. They won quite a few votes in the elections held in the Palestinian areas in 2006. Mm-hmm. And shortly thereafter, they decided to take over the Gaza Strip. And they did so in a bloody manner, kicking out the Fatah, the PLO, killing quite a few officials of the PLO, and did a military takeover. Apparently, the majority of the, by now, probably 2.1 million people in Gaza did not have a major problem. As long as Hamas was able to provide some sort of economic existence. For example, they were able to obtain, with Israel's permission, something we now regret very much, a monthly allowance from Qatar, ranging between $35 and $50 million to be paid to officials, which means to Hamas. And this meant thousands and tens of thousands of people, and somehow the economy of the Gaza Strip was moving. One of our major regrets, and we are now trying to understand among ourselves what happened, what went wrong, why did we misread the entire situation? Was there purely an intelligence failure? Were the intelligence officers unaware? It's probably deeper than that. It's a matter of a mindset. Mm-hmm. We assume that if they get their money from Qatar with our permission, and that if we allow 15, 20,000 people from Gaza to work in Israel every day, that economic forces will make them behave in, let's say, a more civilized manner. And this is why, basically, what we did in various campaigns against them, we did not go for a major decision. And this time, the feeling in Israel is we have to do, I'll quote to you what President Roosevelt was asked during World War II. There was a conference in Casablanca in January 1943, together with Churchill. And he was asked, what are your war aims? And he said, unconditional surrender, meaning no negotiations, no conditions.
Right.
As this is something we should have told Hamas years ago, unconditional surrender. And this probably is Israel's major aim now, to crush Hamas's military capacity, capability, and even governmental capability. And at some point, we will then have to decide, and I'm not sure we know what to do, who is going to rule Gaza, who is going to take over Gaza. But this will be determined according to how long it will take to rid the world and ourselves of Hamas, and what will be the cost. and what will be the international reaction to all this. At this stage of the game, we have the support, the active military support of the United States. As we speak, there is an American airlift. Planes are constantly bringing equipment to Israel. For example, in the afternoon, 2 planes landed offloading armored jeeps. And this is extremely important for us. And then these jeeps will probably immediately go to the front line. We are getting ammunition. We're getting parts for our Iron Dome. And we have the active American support. We had here the visits of the British Prime Minister. He was here today, earlier. The German Chancellor, foreign ministers of Italy, France, Germany, and I think there were 2 other major figures. But as you rightly pointed out, Gary, increasingly we're beginning to have problems with the media. But not because we're not good at handling the media. We're fairly good. But because there is a tendency in the world to equate. They have so many casualties, they have so many casualties, they have done so much damage, they have done so much. Both sides are to blame. In other words, there is no real understanding of the motives, of the incentive behind the Hamas invasion of Israel. People don't see this as an invasion. They see it as another incursion, another raid. Far from it. The international media, and I've been trying to do my modest share, I'm not sure if very successful, they have to do that. Somebody told me, listen, we have 3 minutes, which we have to explain. We don't have time to go back into history. We have to show blood. We have to show babies crying. We have to show destruction. And there's more destruction in Gaza than in Israel. What we did for the first time, in my experience, I've been involved with the Israeli information effort for almost 60 years, we allowed the circulation of photographs, gruesome, decapitated babies, burnt bodies, burnt homes, bodies strewn, hundreds of bodies strewn in the nature festival area, something we never did. On the other hand, we have a reputation for checking everything.
Right.
Best example, 2 days ago, a hospital in Gaza was hit. I think a Baptist hospital.
Yes.
Where many people sheltered. The immediate Palestinian response was Israel did it, the IDF did it. We're counting 450 dead. Mm-hmm. And this is terrible, this is a war crime, and so on. We waited for 2 hours. And then we assembled photographs and films, and we listened in to conversations between 2 Hamas operatives. Turned out this is a missile fired by Hamas, and it misfired, and it landed in the hospital. I hear now that they talked about 400 dead. The number is probably much less. Mm-hmm. And one of our people then asked one of the interviewers, I forget which channel, you said 450 people. On the basis of what? Did you count them? No, I didn't count them. Who is the source? He said the Palestinian Ministry of Health. I said, who is the government of Gaza? Hamas, which means these figures are Hamas figures. But nobody questioned that. Right. Because people don't have time. And here I suspect that there is a tinge of anti-Semitism. Jews are being killed. Well, they've been killed all along the generations. pogroms and Holocaust and so on. Our decision this time is no more Holocaust. It reminded what happened and our initial helplessness, our initial failure to understand, to grasp the enormity of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
People saying, help us. And it reminded those who survived the Holocaust, it reminded them of Jews in the ghetto saying, help us. And there was no one to help. And therefore, the key difference is two things. One, there's an Israeli army. There is an Israeli population that is determined this will never happen again. We're also determined to punish. And unlike World War II and 1930s, America is behind us.
Mm-hmm.
It was not during the Holocaust, unfortunately. So the struggle to gain an understanding is a very long one. And I'm delighted that you, and through you, tens of thousands of other people who may be listening into us, at least will get the story from a somewhat different perspective.
Well, it's like you say, immediately the news came out that this was done by Israel. Nobody could seem to wait 5 minutes to get another opinion or to ask the IDF what in fact transpired, since they are so careful about tracking everything and understanding what's going on. And, then secondarily to that, there are no apologies that I've seen from the Washington Post or other news media once the truth really was exposed. Not only was it not the Israelis that, caused this incident, but it also landed in the parking lot, not in the hospital. And like you say, the number of people that were involved is really unknown, and it's probably very few. But none of that's ever corrected, because this is always the spirit of what transpires beyond just the natural reality of the land of Israel. In my mind, is the spiritual reality behind the land of Israel, and the absolute intention, as you were saying, for Hamas and other organizations as well as Arab nations to say, really, not only is it not satisfactory to have a state of Israel or a place for the Jewish people to live, they do not want a Jew left on the planet. And so what this is an extension, literally, of the Holocaust and a continuation of the Holocaust, which may have ebbed and flowed at certain times of history since World War II, but it has never gone away. The intention has never gone away, and neither have the activities that would promote that end conclusion of there not being Jews left on the planet. But this, to me, is what is really being faced. And I've been so busy getting this website up and trying to motivate these things. I also wanted to do a podcast about never again, because even what's being planned right now from the state of Israel, from the armed forces of Israel, is not really, they've been accused of revenging the acts and the atrocities of 12, 13 days ago, which most nations would revenge those atrocities. In my mind, Israel must continue its determination of never again. And most countries at one point or another, in talking about the Holocaust, have agreed, never again can this happen. But what is about to transpire militarily is not revenge on what took place through inhumane. There are no words to express what was done to Israel and its citizens during this time. But to me, I know the heart of Israelis and the state of Israel well enough, and the carefulness and the love of life, which is a prime directive for Israel and for the Jewish people. This is about stopping this determination that every Jew must be done away with. This is a continuation of never again. And it must be carried out to the extent where the determination of destruction against the state of Israel and the Jewish people, not just in Israel, in every place they exist on the planet, this must be stopped. And it must be, as you said, there must be no surrender. This has to be completed.
That, curiously enough, we were very much assisted in refuting the story about the hospital, but none other than President Biden.
Right.
Who
Thank
quoted
God.
the Pentagon, quoted American sources, not Israeli sources, who verified independently of Israel what happened. This time, look, we have been dealing with Hamas now for almost 16 years. And it was always stopgap and 2 days, 2 weeks, it was 40 days. And it was never radical. It was never a major operation. We said maybe they've learned a lesson. We will gain 10 more years, 5 more years, and so on.
Right.
This time the feeling is enough is enough. We can't endure a situation where our villages, kibbutzim, moshavim in southern Israel are subjected to rockets. People forget also that during the last 13 days, Hamas fired about 5,000 rockets into Israel.
Yeah.
Where'd they get them?
Mm-hmm.
Who produced it? Who gave them the spare parts? Well, we assume that some is homemade. Much of it is from Iran. Turns out that some of the weapons are from North Korea, believe it or not.
Yes.
And they have drones. I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians gave them some advice, because the Russians now know because of Ukraine. We keep asking ourselves, what was the purpose? Well, the purpose was basically to try and derail Israel, destroy the country, destroy the morale, kill as many Israelis as possible, derail completely a process of normalization between us and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan and possibly Saudi Arabia. Also threaten Egypt and Jordan because they signed peace treaties with us. They're also demonstrating violently in Turkey because Turkey in recent months improved its ties with Israel. In other words, the feeling there was that maybe the tide of history is beginning to run against them.
Mm-hmm.
Time has come to do something spectacular, even if at some point they will lose. And this is the thing that worries most of us, or the fanaticism. Reason does not apply here.
No.
Now, Gary, we are people with a very long history. We are people with historical consciousness. We are also people with a very long memory. And we see that all those who came after us at some point disappeared from history. The Greeks, the Romans, the Mamluks, the Ottomans, British, they all disappeared from history. I well remember a meeting here in Jerusalem years ago, 1992, with the former president of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, who basically dissolved the Soviet Union. And we had a meeting with him at the Hebrew University, and he looked at us and he said, fascism failed, communism failed, socialism failed, Zionism succeeded. In other words, you managed. all the other ideologies collapsed of their own. And therefore, I'll never forget that, because he had a long historical view. It is all very nice to have a historical perspective, but we are not dealing with the Hebrew University classrooms. We're dealing with a very harsh reality in which 360,000 Israeli soldiers are poised on, essentially, it's 2 and 3 fronts. And what they will do will mean how we're going to live here. There's another point I want to make very clear. We have not yet dealt, and we don't realize yet the economic consequences of all this.
Yeah.
The isolation. Most foreign airlines stop flying here. Tourism is at a standstill. Small businesses are in trouble. Restaurants are closed. People don't want to venture out.
Yes.
Because Tel Aviv was hit by missiles. We had explosions not far from Jerusalem and so on. And therefore, at some point, we will have to pay for this.
Yeah.
We also aware that we have lost so far, I think the numbers are hovering around 1,500 dead and 203 hostages, still counting. Not sure this is the end, and we still have not yet identified quite a few bodies, many of them burned down. Therefore, you can't give them a Jewish burial. And that is something that we are very sensitive to all the situation. But I am a born optimist, and I think we will prevail. But at this time, it'll take much longer than 18 days of Yom Kippur War. And when this is over, we will then have to start asking questions, as America did after Pearl Harbor. This is in many respects our Pearl Harbor, totally unprepared for a devastating attack on Israel.
Well, I know it's getting late for you, but I would like to ask one more question, if I may.
I have plenty of time now.
Well, and I know Mick probably does too, because of the fact, like you say, tourism is gone. And so as a tour guide, he's out of work with so many. And I do, before I ask my last question, I want to just make a statement to everybody that's really watching us. This economic issue is a huge issue. I know that we here at Hargrave Ministries are raising money for different humanitarian organizations that are involved on the front lines of the need in Israel. And there are many other really valid, well-run charity organizations in Israel. And Israel needs your help. We were helping Israel and continue to help Israel every month before this started, because the need was so great in a humanitarian. Look at all of the people that were coming, making Aliyah, that were fleeing Ukraine. Many things were transpiring, but now that has increased. So I'm just asking you, find a place, find a way to give, not just through your prayers and your support of heart, but find a way to donate and help Israel in this time of need financially. I really, really hope you will do that. Thank you very much. Now, my last question for you is, dealing with Hezbollah, when we look at that scenario, I know it's a great concern to Israel. I know it is to the military. Do you feel that Israel on its own is capable of dealing with Hezbollah, knowing the level of munitions and the fact that now we're not dealing with dumb rockets coming out of Gaza? We're dealing with sophisticated weaponry that can target specific areas, and it's a whole different world if this is engaged.
Different ball game. I think we can. However, the costs will be enormous. They are reported to have between 100 and 150,000 rockets. Many of them are precision rockets,
Yes.
which means that they can hit our Air Force bases. They can hit our power stations, our water system, our urban areas, our industry. And in this respect, the threat, the danger from Hezbollah is far greater.
Yes.
On the other hand, they still remember not only 82, but even more so 2006, in which Israel destroyed about, I think, a third of the southern part of Beirut. It's called Dahya, where the headquarters and the arsenals and munition depots and so on of Hezbollah existed. At that time, we did not go after basic infrastructure of Beirut at the request of the Americans. I remember the Americans said you can fight as long as you need. We took about 33 days. And but they said don't hit their power stations, don't hit their water system. You can destroy the airport, all right. But don't hit this, because the Lebanese government pleaded with the Americans that please leave us this. Israel has indicated that if Hezbollah fires, then all gloves are off, and there will be no such considerations. We will suffer. I suspect the Lebanese state could find itself in ruins.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if they will help. The moment this happens, then you have to ask yourself where the Russians are going to be and where China is going to be. China has been very critical of Israel, and that is in the context of Sino-American relations. The Russians are delighted because this takes people's mind off Ukraine.
Yeah.
Iran, of course, is watching very carefully to see what happens in Israel. But they all have to bear in mind that if they will attempt to harm Israel in a bad way, the price they will pay could be devastating. And eventually, it will be a regional balance of terror.
Mm-hmm.
Each one will be armed with conventional, probably non-conventional weapons. They will face each other. The problem in that situation is it will bring about some sort of reconciliation, as we had with Egypt, Jordan, Emirates, and so on. But it could also, question is, what happens if non-conventional weapons fall into the hands of Hamas, of these organizations?
Mm-hmm.
There's another key question is, can you destroy an ideology?
No.
And that is the key problem. You can destroy military power. Can you destroy an ideology?
Yeah.
This is where we wonder. But I think that we will prevail. We'll prevail not only because of our strength, our organization, but as Golda Meir told Joe Biden, we have nowhere else to go. No other place. And above all, we are convinced of the justice of our cause.
Mm-hmm.
And we are supported by many, many, many millions of good people like yourself and your followers. And what we are asking of you is three things. I mean, pray for us. This is always useful. Help us fight the battle of information, of public relations. Help us economically. And please, the moment this war ends and the skies are open again, come and see us. This will be the best expression of your love and friendship to us. We want to see you here. We will then show you what happened and how we did it and what are our future plans. I propose also something else that you may be interested in. I suggest that at some point next week, we meet again on a Zoom.
Okay.
By then we'll be wiser and we can assess once again where we are and what has happened in the last week. Thank you very much for your attention, and maybe you want to ask my son a few questions. It's up to you.
Well, what I was wondering is if I could do a separate call with you and just have some time getting your feelings and thoughts on all these matters, you know, in a different call.
Yeah, we can do that.
With Mickey.
Yes.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
do that. And maybe also cover and look at the civil response in Israel, which is gives us a lot of optimism of, yeah, we're going to overcome because of the civil response immediately. So many volunteering
Yes.
grassroots organizations that are chipping in and doing such an impressive work that give us a lot of hope and optimism that, yes, as a country, we are together and we'll overcome.
Good. Well, I will email you and we'll set up a time and day to get together with you, Mickey, and then we'll set up another time with you, Dr. Medzini.
With pleasure.
All right.
Thank
With
you
pleasure.
both so much.
Thank you very
Lovely
much.
talking to you, and best regards.
Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.